Latif, who is the Executive Secretary, Latif Busari, the Executive Secretary, National Council on Sugar, talking about the adjusting and looking at the roadmap for Nigeria's sugar roadmap there. So the road is part of the conversation we're having next with the President of the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration, Dr. Bashir Jamo, who is live to us from our Abuja studios. The Nigerian government under President Buhari had prided itself in road, rail, and bridges infrastructure. So let's have this very interesting conversation with Dr. Jamo. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Bosun. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing well. I'm sure transportation or transport infrastructure is the sing-song, maybe after power today. If you take power, electricity out of it, I think the next conversation is about road, rail, and bridges. So if you look at this particular topic within our quest for economic reform and serious growth and development, where do you see sustainable transportation system?
Well, Bosun, as I continue to say from time to time, life is transport, transport is life, because there is nothing you can do without transport. Our goods and services, it affects transport and work. Whatever you do, transport has a strong position in it. So as far as the issue of infrastructure is concerned and the economic development, we cannot be able to achieve anything if the transport system is in a bad shape. So as part of what the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration of Nigeria is trying to see what type of contribution we can make to assist the government in terms of policy formulation interventions, as well as kind of investment, giving right framework for investors to come in, because of the meager resources cannot be able to address the entire problems we are envisaging. And moreover, you can understand and agree with me that over the periods of time, the infrastructural decay in the country has been so enormous. The population is growing high, by World Bank estimate 2.6 increase annually. When we have this kind of demography, but we don't have corresponding increase in terms of our infrastructure. So we must do everything possible to ensure that we put everything on track so that we can we can assist the government in trying to see that this infrastructure is being put in place for sustainable development.
So, can you point us to what I call the road to an effective and efficient intermodal transport system for a country with a huge population, still increasing like Nigeria, and you have a large size of the economy is informal. In other words, aside from those who work in banks and maybe oil companies, or maybe in television stations like this, many Nigerians, most Nigerians move around every minute, every second to sell goods, to do whatever. So transportation is key for a country with very almost 80% informal commerce, general merchandise, trading, whatever you call it.
Yeah, you are quite apt, Bosun. What we intend to do, our institute basically is an advocacy. That's major aspect of our own functions. Then, part of our act give us powers to be able to introduce a kind of curriculum that will help experts and professionals that will help to build the transport sector. So yesterday, at the opening ceremony of the Maiden Summit of the Institute, I made mention the role we intend to play to assist the government, which includes the issue of advocacy. We will have to contact the Federal Ministry of Education, Federal Head of Service, first of all, to see where the professionals of transporters is going to be put in place, be it in the ministries or in MDAs. Then we will now have an interface with universities, because the human capital is the most important factor that will drive the professional transporters to have an adequate infrastructure that will work towards achieving efficient and effective transport system. So when after that advocations, we put in place standardization. We standardize the transport system by making sure that all the professionals, they have a very standard certificate that they can practice the transport. Over the years, any other person can go and practice transport. But soon you will agree with me. Today, if you go to the university, you read law. You cannot go and appear in court and defend your client because you read law. You must go to law school and obtain certificate for you to qualify you to be a lawyer or a judge in a court of law. And also, if you go and study accountancy today, you come back, you want to work, your career progressions must be that you have certifications from ICANN or ANAN or any other relevant professional body. This is to ensure that all practitioners in such professions, they are well qualified and they can be able to put in place what is required for that professions to work. So that is what we envisage also in transportation. We want to have a certificated staff and professionals that will now help the government to ensure that we have perfect policies that will drive the transportation sector. Another issue we discussed yesterday as a short time measure, we will have to interface with NYSC and then the road safety to train some of the NYSC members as volunteer groups so that we can have our stakeholders having a lot of ease way of road transport system where we have bad roads and other things. The volunteers will help either in terms of traffic with training from the road safety, as well as maybe giving a little patches on our roads. That also we intend to address.
Dr. Jamo, your institute, we'll get back to the effective intermodal system, but again, you just talked about education, knowledge, skills, and all of that. How does the institute now fit into the new University of Transportation, which the administration is putting in place?
Well, as I earlier said, Bosun, I told you if you go to university and study accountancy, you must go and be a chartered accountant, a professional body that will certify you that you are a professional, that you can work in within the accountancy professional framework. And then if you go to law school, you obtain your own degree in law. You can work anywhere, you are a graduate, but you cannot go and practice in a court of law. So the institute as well, we have a duty if the university produce a graduate in transportation. We have a lot of officers today that they have certifications in transportation, but we don't have relevant body that is being recognized by law in Nigeria to certify them. Our institute, we just got certification and accent of Mr. President. We have to, I want to use this opportunity to thank Mr. President for understanding the importance of the professional body like Chartered Institute of Transport Administration of Nigeria by accenting our bill after the passing of that bill from the National Assembly and the Senate as well as a chartered body. So whatever the University of Transportation produce in terms of manpower is the duty of the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration to certify them, just like the chartered accountants do, the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management look at human resources, just like the Institute of Management look at the managerial aspect and leadership aspect of manpower. So that is what our own role in terms of linkage with that particular university. In addition to that, Bosun, we will interface with them in ensuring that the curriculum that they are going to adopt from time to time tally with the international best practices. We have a chance of professionals and professors that will have to sit down with the Federal Ministry of Education as well as the university to adjust the curriculum so that we can be an up-to-date country with international best practices in practicing transportation.
Dr. Bashir Jamo, stick around. We'll take a break. We'll be right back with you. We'll continue this conversation. Very important. We want to have your views about how the role of the private sector in getting Nigeria's intermodal transportation in place, and what are your views moving forward on our current annual budgeting for transportation? Where should our focus be between road, rails, and bridges? We'll be right back into everyone. This is Business Morning, discussing national transportation in Nigeria's economic reform with the president of the Chartered Institute of Transport Administration. That's Dr. Bashir Jamo, live from Abuja studios. Thank you, Dr. Jamo, for being there. Let me ask you a few of these questions. I'm sure you've seen President Buhari's administration in the last 5 years focusing on works and housing and transportation, the airports, the roads, the rail, and the Second Niger Bridge, and a lot of other. Are you encouraged by what you've seen so far in terms of what the federal government is doing?
Bosun is very interesting. You know, if we try to focus on this kind of infrastructure, provisions of infrastructure over the 2 decades, you begin to wonder where Nigeria can go. You know, I travel a lot by road and I travel by rail. I am from Kaduna State. I cannot remember when I used my car to drive from Kaduna to Abuja over the period of, I think, 1 year. Mostly, it's more convenient for me to use the rail, even though it's been started over the period of about 4 or 5 years, but we started using this rail over a year ago or so, or two. And the Honorable Minister of Transport, just last 2 weeks, he opened up the pre-ride from Lagos to Ibadan. Then you can also, if you look at the budget, we are going to commence linking the Ibadan, Lokoja, Abuja rail lines. Also, Maiduguri axis, Maiduguri to Enugu is also in place. Last year, we had International Port and Harbour Conference here in Abuja. It's an international conference, I think, driven by Nigerian Port Authority. And the president promised that, or directed that all ports must be connected with rails. Today, the Apapa Port internal rail lines is being completed. What we are waiting for is for the Nigerian Railway to link it to the grid, major grid. And then Eastern Zone, that is Port Harcourt, they also finished the internal rail. What remains also is to link it also to the main grid. And then the issue of bridge, as you mentioned, second bridge, Niger Bridge, also, you know, is in the openings. There are a lot of things coming off. And I used to say always, government cannot do it alone. The resources is scarce. What we need to do now, and what we intend to do in our institute, is to see how we can introduce a kind of policy that can drive unlocking the rail system, so that investors can come in and invest just like you have in the British Rail. And then there are so many areas, the port concession, and you can see the efficiency we envisage, even though we are yet to be perfect. I remember that when we did our port concessioning, I was in Brazil. They didn't start their own port concessioning, but they were preparing for it. They were surprised to hear that Nigeria is doing it. So as far as I'm concerned, your questions to the performance of the government in terms of infrastructure is very encouraging. And I am happy to say that we will also put our hand on deck and ensure that we give government the appropriate advice and policies that will assist in getting the right framework that we are going to use to fast track this infrastructure,
Dr.
no
Jamo,
matter the little resources we have.
Dr. Jamo, investment is what the government needs. The government is thinking of doing additional multi-billion-dollar borrowings. The bulk of that will still go into infrastructure, which includes roads, rails, bridges, and the airports, some of the terminals that are yet to be open and other. So there is still a lot to be done. Or you want to advise the government on how to get infrastructure. Do you have any details on how you think this money will come from local or foreign or a combination?
Basically, our own concentrations will be on the international best practices. I can't sit down and say government should do everything. The best things to do is to see different models that we have to work with, either public-private partnership with international investors, or build, operate, transfer, or build, own, and transfer. All these models, we will now sit down, and our summit intends to address those issues. At the end of the summit, we will now bring out our communique. And in our communique, we will introduce a committee. But soon, today in Nigeria, whatever you think you want in terms of research and development, certain group of experts, they have already conducted such research, and we have it on ground. And when we go to our shelf, we get it. But the problem has been always implementations. So the Institute, what we intend to do, after ascertaining the best way to go and to get the funding, we will now have to introduce committees that will help government in implementing such communiques and recommendations. So at the end of the summit, Bosun, I will be able to tell you where and how we intend to assist or help government to source fund, or which way is the best way possible, either internally or foreign investors. The issue of loan, there is no how you can say that you will live without loan. I am not an economist, but I've listened to a lot of economists. If you borrow and you invest it well, you look at the time value of money, something that you can get in 10 years. You borrow money and you do it. You minimize the waste that you can do over a period of time. Those that are saying that, why collecting loan, what are we going to do? Previously, we have the money. We didn't do what we are supposed to do. We have oil, price of oil skyrocketing. Instead, we save. Previous government and former Minister of Finance came out openly. She has been warning that we should save this money for the rainy day. Today, the money we have, we saved, we spent it. We don't have anything. The price of oil is continue to dwindle, going down. Now, where do we get the funds? If the government says, okay, let us go and borrow, and they put it in a proper way, I don't think if there is anything wrong with that. However, I don't want to preempt the outcome of our own summit. Let us see the best way professionals will advise, and we will now follow it up with our own committees to ensure that the implementation is being done in a proper way.
Dr. Jamo, we've built infrastructure in Nigeria way back into the aftermath of the Civil War. So we build roads, we build bridges and all of that, although some of them were not completed and all of that. But the key problem had always been maintenance culture. So What's the institute doing in this area? Can you contribute anything to this culture? Is it knowledge? Is it skill? Is it know-how? How do you think we can enshrine this so that the current road, rail, bridges, whatever been built, will not fall back to the same culture of lack of maintenance?
Yeah, Bosun, you are quite apt and honest to this fact. We have been having problem of maintenance culture. What we intend to do as part of our own mandate is education, research, and development. First of all, you have to study and know where the problem lies, why we are having this kind of problems. You cannot invest your own money on this kind of infrastructure. Even your personal house, you do maintain it from time to time. At times, you know, it's because of corruption in the system. The money will be budgeted and, you know, it may not be utilized for the right purposes. So our own role, as I told you, is just advocacy and, you know, we try to intervene, interventions from time to time when we see something is going wrong. We will do our own best to see that whatever is being put in place, as you earlier mentioned on the issue of budget, we follow it to the letter through the committees and see that this thing is being done. We will make sure that the issue of maintenance culture is being inculcated. And that's why I mentioned to you that we will now align with the Ministry of Education to ensure that we introduce curriculum that will educate our own students and members of staffs that can be well, that will make them be well grounded in terms of the implementations of budget as well as policies with regards to the maintenance culture.
Dr. Bashir Jamo, President, Chartered Institute of Transport Administration, thank you so much for coming through on the program today, and we look forward to the communique of this Chartered Institute on the advice for the government on how to get more investments in the transportation sector. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your time.